you were raised in Gary, Indiana, which you just told me you're also going back to as an ambassador. So tell me a little about Gary, Indiana, in the when you were growing up, and tell me what you're doing to revitalize it now, and then we'll jump into
Oh,
the story.
I sure will. It's just been tremendous. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, and I just had a fabulous childhood there. I remember going out in the street during the autumn and we'd gather up all the leaves and we'd put potatoes on the end of the stick. We'd light like this huge bonfire and sit out there and roast our potatoes. And, just there were on my block growing up, there must have been at least 20 children. I mean, the wards across the street had 10 kids alone. So that was half of the population of my block. And being outside and told, you have to be inside by the time the street light comes on. And, my house was the hangout house. And I used to be so upset with my mom. Why our house there? All the boys over here, all my brother's friends are here. She said, no, I like it like that because at least I know where my son is. And just going out Halloween and soaping up the windows and walking to school. It was just a great time to be in Gary, Indiana. My high school was the only high school that was interracial. I mean, we had, there were Hispanics, white, I mean, across the board. And it was just great to be in that environment to prepare us for the world. And I just loved growing up. I think I had the best childhood. And then we were only 30 minutes away from Chicago, Illinois. So we would go over to the Museum of History and Science and go to Riverview at the park there. It was just an incredible childhood and what I remember. And, over the years, it has suffered a great loss of not being, managed properly and things done properly. But now I'm back there and help get this new young mayor into office and with some incredible ideas. And we are, it's called BIG, Building, Building in Gary, or Beauty in Gary. And so I was just there this past Saturday picking up trash. Every Saturday, people are coming out and we're picking up trash off of the streets and, cleaning up the city. And yeah, I'm an ambassador. They tell me they're going to name a street after me. Yeah.
Amazing, congrats. What a
And my grandfather's home, where I spent the first 8 years of my life, is going to be a historical museum uh, down the street from the Jackson Five, because the Jackson Five, Michael Jackson,
right.
they're all from Gary, Indiana, and their house that they grew up in is a historical museum, as a historical site. So now my grandfather's house, where I grew up, is about to be a historical site, and it's just all incredible things happening.
That is incredible. That's so your grandfather lived a few blocks from the Jacksons.
Yes.
Wow. Did you ever have any encounter with him when you were younger?
Oh, yeah, I remember meeting Michael. I think Michael was about 6 years old, maybe 5, and we were at the Masonic Temple. There was a show there with this guy, Gene Chandler, who was the Duke of Earl. He had a song called The Duke of Earl, and he was there, and they were on the show with him, and that was the first time that I saw Jackson 5, Michael and the Jackson 5 perform. So, yeah, we
Amazing.
we
Was
were
that before Motown, before they were signed to Motown?
That was before they were signed to Motown,
Wow.
and they had a local little record out called "You're Big Boy Now, No More Daddy's Little Boy. You're a Big Man Now, No More Daddy's Little Boy." And I had my first local record to come out that was written and produced by Gene Records of the Shy Lights and Barbara Acklin, who did a song called "Love Makes a Woman." They produced mine, and so we came out at the same time. And I remember their cousin, who was the drummer, came knocking on my door, and he said, "We just signed to Motown, and we're moving to California. What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to school. I'm going to be a nurse."
Well, even though you had that record, you were going by a different name, right? You were by your it was
My
Dorothy
maiden name was Chandler, Deniece
Chandler.
Chandler.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I wanted to be a nurse. I didn't want to sing because I grew up in a very strict religious environment. And if I sang the devil's music, I was on my way to hell. And I was trying to stay off the weenie road, Scott. I didn't want to go to hell. So
Wow. Were you singing in churches, growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I used to sing in church all the time.
yeah,
My grandfather was a pastor. He had about 25 members, 20 members at the most in a little storefront. And my great uncle was also the bishop of the state of Indiana for the Church of God in Christ. He had about 70 members. That was a big church then. And so, and
amazing.
so I was singing in church all the time. And it's funny, at my grandfather's church, I don't know if you remember this show called What's Happening,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Ernest Thomas rerun, and Ernest Thomas and I went to my grandfather's church, and we were the choir, just the two of us.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. And so you weren't listening to non-secular, music? It was mostly gospel and religious growing up?
Oh no, I was listening. My mom had a record player, and she
She
had this
did.
incredible LP collection, not like the one I see behind you. Oh my gosh. But my mom had this incredible LP collection. And I would sneak into her room after school and listen to Nancy Wilson. You know, Jackie Gleason had an orchestra, Jackie Gleason Orchestra that did all the standards. Dakota Staten. I would listen
Yeah,
to all of these artists. Little Jimmy Scott, Nancy Wilson was my favorite. I
yeah.
wanted to look like her, sing like her, be like her. And so I was listening. And then when I was a senior in high school, my math teacher bought a record store, and I asked him for a job after school, and he gave me a job after school. My mom said I could work, and I would be sitting there, spinning the 45s, and I'd be singing with them. I sing with Aretha Franklin and Supremes and all of the Gladys Knight. And one day, um, he happened to be in the back where all of the product was, where he stacked the product. He was in the back. And I was in the front. I didn't know he was back there. So I started singing. And he came in there. He said, I didn't know you could sing. I said, well, you would know that if you came to church on Sundays. And
That's a
so he was the one that went to Chicago and brought over Ernie Thomas from uh, I forget the name of the record label, but anyway, he bought Eugene Records, and Barbara Acklin over asked me to sing. I sang, and that's how I got my first local record. But I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to hell. Mm-mm.
Mhm. Well, how did you get from going to nursing school to, I think your first gig was with Stevie Wonder in Wonderlove, is that right?
Yes. I had a cousin when we were 14 years old. His grandmother and my grandmother were sisters. So during the summer, we turned 14. John, name was John Harris, he would come and stay 1 week at his grandmother's house in Gary. And he was the finest man I'd ever seen in my life. He had the processed hair, and it was like, oh my God, he was the Billy D of my time. And anyway, he comes in there. And so he would say, oh, I know Stevie Wonder. I know Stevie Wonder. Stevie and I are close. I said, shut up, Pinocchio. Everybody that lives in Detroit say they know Stevie Wonder. You don't know Stevie Wonder. But after him saying that 7 years, it was him that got me the audition with Stevie. And I got the job as a background singer with Stevie was because my cousin told me for 7 years that he knew Stevie, and I didn't believe him.
And you weren't planning, or were you doing any music prior to that, or were you just focused on your, studies?
I was in school, Scott. I found out that I was not a good student. That science was kicking my behind. I said, "What? You got to know this to be a nurse?" And so I called him. He called me one day and he said, we're coming into town. Stevie's performing, and I'll get you some tickets." I said, "Yeah, okay." And he said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm not doing well in school. I got to figure out what to do with myself." And that's when he said, "Well, Stevie's looking for singers. I told him about you, so let me get the audition." So no, I was in school, but I was at Purdue University, but I wasn't doing good at all.
Absolutely incredible. And so Stevie Wonder, at that time, that was like, I mean, he had released a number of albums since he was a kid, but that
Oh
time was
yeah.
music. He had probably just put out Music of My Mind, and then there's Talking Book is when you
Yes.
came in. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. And it was just incredible just to watch him, you know, in his creativity. And actually, that's when I found out that I was a songwriter because I'd been writing poetry. You know, I'd been writing a lot of poems out through high school. I'd actually had a poem published about the state of Indiana. I won one of my poems won in the state of Indiana, and I was in a book. But when I joined Stevie, that's when I found out that poetry plus music equals song,
Hmm.
and I started writing.
And so when you joined Stevie, was it for a tour, or was it for the recording of one of those albums? Probably Talking Book, I would guess.
No, when I joined Stevie, he was touring. And so I was so excited because they said, oh, the next concert, my first concert, it's going to be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, I'm on my way to Philly. Oh my God, I'm on my way to Philly. You know, I just heard about Philly. I'm on my way. We were outside of Philly in this little town called King of Prussia. And we did this a whole concert thing, and it was really great. But I started with him and he started touring. And about 3 months into that tour, we ended up as the opening act for the Rolling Stones. And so I was on the road with him with the
Yeah.
Rolling Stones.
I want to ask you a little about that because that was a very famous tour, that tour of the United States, and it was documented. There was a movie that never came out called Cocksucker
Oh,
Blues.
oh,
You know
really?
about that?
No, I didn't know that
Yeah,
they produced a movie on it.
yeah. So at the time during that tour, there was a documentarian who was there filming a lot of the backstage and the concerts,
Uh-huh.
and they put together an edit, and it's been, people have seen it. I've not seen it, but it's around. And the Rolling Stones blocked it from being released because they felt it was too debaucherous. Because that tour,
Mhm.
the backstage stuff showed a lot of debauchery, which I want to ask about.
Yeah,
But what was also in the film, which was incredible from what I've heard, and I hope to one day see it, is at the end of the concert, Stevie would jam with the Rolling Stones.
yeah.
Do so. I want to ask you a little about about that tour and things you remember, and did you were you on some of those jams with the Stones, and what was that experience like?
You know, after we came had our part, you know, the band and everything, we didn't sit in on the jam sessions with Stevie and the Stones. We knew that they were going on, but especially the background singers, I don't think any of us, you know, sat in with that. And as far as the debauchery, there was a whole lot of that going on. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Rolling Stones helped me pick up my prayer life because I was out there praying, help me, Lord, help me, Lord. You see what they doing over in that corner? Help me, Lord. Help me, Lord. You know, I mean, it was amazing to see them have their own doctor out there in case somebody needed medical treatment. You know, I remember one night after a concert in Chicago, we went out to get on the bus, and the police were there trying to disband, you know, all the fans that were out there, and they were throwing tear gas, and we got caught in the tear gas. And I thought I got on the bus for our group. I ended up at the what was it? The Playboy Mansion at some party, and I was praying, Lord, if you get me out of here, I ain't never coming up in here again. Please, please, Lord. Please, Lord, you know I don't belong up in here. And I remember being in a room, and the room was totally black. I don't know how I got there, and all it had was a fireman's pole in the middle of the room. And I was calling down, and I was saying, can somebody help me? I'm stuck in this room. I don't know how I got here. Can somebody help me? And somebody said, go down the pole, go down the pole. I was like, no, I'm not going to go down the pole. So eventually went down the pole. Like out the room. I said, Lord, if you get me out here, I'm never coming to the Playboy Mansion again. You know, good missionary chick, good Christian girls don't belong in the Playboy Mansion. I don't know how I got here, but it was, I'm telling you, there were nights with the Rolling Stone, but it was just incredible. I think the thing that I was impressed with the most is how much people loved them,
Mm,
loved the music. I mean, they were into the music. They would hit the stage. And even with Stevie, I mean, because now they were being introduced to him, you know, the world was being,
right.
and it was the most incredible, one of the most incredible moments in my career was to be out there with them.
Incredible. And how did the audience react to Stevie?
Oh, they loved it.
Yeah,
Loved him. I mean, it was after that that he really his career took off.
yeah,
Next thing we know, he's getting 7 Grammys, you know,
yeah, yeah. That's
for
the some of the best records ever made is what he
oh,
ran.
yeah. E and it started, you know, as certainly the Rolling Stones played a huge part in that. You know, Scott, I'm always, uh, what's the word I want? Impressed by the people in London. I mean, you know, we have fans all over the world, but I tell you, the British fans, they know everything. They had that record when I was Denise Chandler. They know all your business. They know from beginning to, they follow you. They're very, very loyal and very, very much into not only the music, but you as a person, your life. And it was just incredible to see how even the recording artists in London love American artists so much. When you think of, you know, in the early days with Muddy
Yeah,
Waters and all those folks going over to London, they had no idea how popular they were and how loved they were until they went over there. And it's like, oh my God, you know, America is one thing, but there's a whole nother world that loves this music.
yeah. There would be no Rolling Stones without Muddy Waters and Chuck
That's
Berry
right.
in American music, American blues,
That's right.
R&B. Yeah,
And and what I respect about it is they tell you, you know, we listen to this person, we listen to that person. It's, you know, it's just amazing how they gravitate to our music and what they've learned and the credit that they give to American artists through their music.
so at what point did you start recording Talking Book? And I'm curious of any memories of those sessions, you going in recording the vocals.
Well, I tell you, we were recording all the time. You know,
Okay.
we really had no idea what would end up on on Stevie's project because we were constantly recording. I mean, we'd be in the studio. He would be in the studio 24/7 when we weren't traveling. And so would we. You know, we'd come in and he'd play an idea and we say, "Oh yeah, okay, we like that." And you know, we record it. So you know, there was X amount of songs that came out on those projects, but we probably recorded triple or quadruple the amount of music that actually ended up on the project. I mean,
Wow.
the creativity is off the chain with him.
Yeah, and he played most of the instruments himself on these records, is right?
He did. Yep, he
And
did.
in terms of because he's a visionary and on all fronts, and those albums are I can't
Yes.
speak highly enough of him. And so when you're doing these vocals, does he have a vision of where he wants it to be, or are you and the other vocalists coming up with your own vision of it?
It was both. And a lot of times he knew what he wanted us to sing and he would tell us. And then while he'd be playing or something, you know, we'd hum something, you know, join in and start humming or throw out an idea. So it was very open. It was him telling us and giving us direction, but also us creating, you know, what we thought we should be saying and how it should be said and when it should be said. Yeah, it was very open.
You've mentioned in interviews that Stevie, like you learned a lot from Stevie, but I didn't really hear specifically what those things are that you did learn. What are those lessons, 40 years on, 50 years on, that still are imparted with you from that time working with this genius at a seminal moment in history?
Well, like I said, the thing about Stevie is too is that he, you know, just music just oozed out of him. And I think us being around, our being around Stevie, it oozed out of us. You know, I mean, there was so much of a genius and musicality in that environment until it drew us in and drew things out of us, you know, things that I wouldn't have thought of singing or things that I hadn't heard before I started to hear just because of what he was sending out would make me or and Lonnie and Shirley and the other singers do certain things and the musicians as well. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I was in a band. It was the Brecker brothers were there when I first got there. You
yes,
know,
hot band.
a
Oh
hot.
yeah,
I mean,
I've seen the footage, and it's like, damn, that was. On Fire. And you collaborated a lot with the band members. Your
Yes.
first song, Slip Away, and Free were
Uh-huh.
all written.
Yes.
Tell me how that came about, where you started writing with, the band, the Wonder Love band.
Well, I tell you, we'd be up there and we'd be waiting for Stevie to come, and we'd be there. And you just start fiddling and playing stuff and just having your own jam sessions. And that's how we started writing and doing things together because we did have the time. We'd be there for maybe an hour or so before he would arrive. And I think, in retrospect, he was probably giving us that time to gel and do things and write. He was giving us the space to do our own creative things. And so that's how those songs came about. The Nathan Watts would be playing a lick on the bass and I'd jump in, or Suse would jump in, and we started being creative and writing. That's how that whole thing together. But I mean, and you're around the Brecker brothers. When I got there, David Sanborn was his saxophone player. Just so many incredible musicians, and you'd have to be half dead not to pick up something or to start creating. And if you were around all these people and you weren't creating, you need to go to nursing school. You were in the wrong place. You
Yeah,
should have been there with us.
incredible. And there's a story I think I heard that you taught Stevie how to drive. Tell me about Stevie Wonder and how you brought him in a car and had him drive you somewhere or
Well,
something.
Stevie always wanted to get in somebody's car and drive. So I said, okay, Steve. He wanted to drive. I had this little 1968 Rambler. And so Stevie wants to drive. I said, okay, let's go out to the parking lot at the shopping center and no cars around. And so I put him in the driver and we go through steering wheel, the car was on. I let him drive, but I had my foot on the brake because I told him, I said, you know what? I love Jesus, but I'm not trying to see him today. So one false move, buddy, and I'm stopping. And so he did a jerk. I said, that's it. And I had put on the brake. I pressed on the brake. It got him out of the car. I said, that's enough. You didn't have enough driving lesson for today. But I mean, he wanted to drive. So of course I said, okay. I said, you know,
It's amazing. He's good at everything but driving.
That's right. That's right. And it was fun, but man, he scared me. My foot, like I said, my foot was over on the brake. Here, you keep your foot over on the accelerator. I got the brake. I'm in charge.
Amazing. What incredible stories, incredible time. And to
Oh,
go back to a point you just said, which was Stevie giving you and the band the time to write your own music
yeah.
and to play. Free, maybe you could tell me the story about that and how at a concert that opened up your world and your solo career.
Yes. Well, we were waiting on Stevie to come in, and the band was tinking, and we were tinking, and Nathan Watts started to play this bass line. Next thing, I just started singing, "I want to be free," free, 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 and so we started that. And Susie Green walked up to me and she said, "Here's some lyrics." So we started, writing the lyrics, and we wrote the song there in a band rehearsal, practice one day. And so we were all writing songs, and Stevie would let Wonder Love come out before him and do one song. And so this particular night, they said, let's do Deniece's song. Let's do Free. So I said, oh, okay, we'll do Free. So we come out and we do Free. But what we didn't know is that Maurice White, Verdine White, Philip Bailey, and their attorney was sitting on the front row. So after the concert, the attorney came backstage. He said, "Oh my, we loved that song you did. We loved your singing." He said, "Who wrote that song?" And I said, I did with some of the band members. That's my song." And so then I said, "I got more songs." I said, "I'd love to send you some of my songs. I'm a songwriter." And I said, me and Philip Bailey have the same vocal range. So Earth, Wind, and Fire can do my songs. And so I said, can I send you your songs? He gave me his card. About a week so later, I sent him 7 songs of that I had written. And so I didn't hear anything back. You know, 8 months later, I get a call. Maurice White wants to have a meeting with you. And I'm thrilled. I'm telling everybody, oh my God, they're going to sing my songs. Earth, Wind, Fire is going to do my music. Oh, thank you, Lord. You know, and I get in the meeting and Maurice says, well, I just started my own production company and I just signed a girls group called The Emotions. And I want to, I'm looking for a female solo artist, and I think you're it. And I said, huh? Earth, Wind, and Fire is not going to sing my song. Philip's not going to sing my song. He said, no, we want you to sing them. I said, and I went back, I talked to my mom, they said, my songwriter says, girl, you better take that record deal. I said, okay. So I did. And of course, the rest is history. He did. I mean, that first project was just incredible, you know, just incredible what Maurice did, what he took my songs and, you know, they started here. They were, you know, they were a person, but he came in and put a hat, a purse, some pearls on her. You know, he took it to the next level and just incredible. And him with his arranger, Charles Stephanie,
Yeah.
was just I mean, on one of my songs called If You Don't Believe, you know, we were listening to the beginning and Charles Stephanie just went over to the piano and he lifted up the top of the piano. He grabbed a guitar pick and just strummed the pick across the piano strings. And that's what you hear in the very beginning of the song. Who does that?
Genius. Geniuses.
I mean, what he heard when he listened to what they heard was, I couldn't believe what they heard. You know, I mean, I wrote it, I had a certain vision in my mind, but what they did with the music was pure genius, like you said.
Yeah, and that's just like playing with Stevie at that pinnacle of their career. This is a pinnacle also, I think, of Earth, Wind, and Fire when they're on fire. A-
Oh, yep.
And that the record, if I'm correct, this is Niecy, was recorded around the same time that Earth, Wind, and Fire was doing their Spirit album.
Yes.
And all the players, most of Earth, Wind, and Fire is on the record, and it sounds. I mean, it just sounds perfect. Was it recorded live with the band in the studio and you singing vocals?
We recorded live with the band in the studio. You know, I was singing along with them. Of course, I went back and redid my vocals, but when we were recording, I was singing along with them. So there was just this synergy between all of us, you know, as it went ahead. And I never forget on If You Don't Believe, this incredible trumpet player, Oscar Brashear, was in the studio. And so I came in and did a little something right before the trumpet came in. I was just kind of warming up, and the look on his face, because I'd been around a lot of studio musicians. I was dating a studio musician, so I'd been around a lot of them, but none of them had ever heard me sing. And I mean, I will never forget the look on his face when he and I started recording If You Don't Believe together. I mean, I have to admit, there's probably only one other time in the studio where I felt that magic. It was magical.
Wow. Wow.
It was simply magical. That whole working with Maurice and Charles Stephanie on that project, just magical. And I've only experienced that one other time like that.
What was that other time?
The other time was working with Tom Bell when I
Oh,
did
yeah,
It's
I
Gonna
want to
Take
ask you about
Care.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
with
tell me.
Tom.
We'll come back to This Is
Yeah,
Niecy.
we'll go down.
Tell me about Tom Bell, because Tom Bell and the fact you've worked with some of the greatest producers ever. You
Yeah.
got Tom Bell, you got Charles Stepney, you got Maurice White, David Foster,
Yeah.
and I'm forgetting some as well, I'm sure. Uh,
George Duke, my
George
baby.
Duke, the George Duke. Yeah, he's the dude. So
Yep.
tell me though, Tom Bell and that experience was my melody. Is that the one?
My melody, and we also did Niecy.
You
You
see,
know, we had two projects that we worked on together. Tom Bell, um, was was probably, and I would still say with more, working with Stevie Wonder, working with Maurice White and Charles Stephanie, and then working with Tom Bell were the three most musical projects that I ever worked on with the three geniuses of them. I mean, even with my voice, I will be the first one to admit that everyone does not know how to produce me. And I've worked with some well-known producers and they didn't have a clue. But those three situations, they expressly knew exactly what to do with my voice, exactly what to do with my songs, my music. And it was magic. I had loved Tom Bell for years. I'd been listening to him with the stylistics, of course, that whole Philly
Oh, yeah.
sound done
Yeah.
with them.
You invented
A
it.
huge fan of Russell Thompson of the stylistic because of the voice and that stuff. And him writing with Linda Creed just in Bet You by Golly, wow. And you know, people make the world go round. I was a huge Tom Bell fan. And so I finally got a chance. I said, my manager said, wait a minute, what about Tom Bell? I said, I love Tom Bell. And like I said, it was just an incredible experience to be with them. I will never forget, I was recording this song called Silly that I'd written,
Mhm.
Silly of Me. And Tom walked out of the string session and said, I'll be back. I said, well, wait. I said, okay. So I said, okay, we'll wait for you. He said, no, you do it. And I said, no, I can't tell the string folks what to do. He said, Deniece, you know what to do. You know everything. He walked out. My knees were shaking, but the strings, we started recording them. And then actually I said, no, that's not right. You need to do the dee 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 dee. And so I said, oh, so he's teaching me to produce now, by leaving me in the session. He knew what he was doing. And I was freaking out in the first because I said, no, you, Tom Bell, you tell the strings what to do. And he was saying, no, you, Deniece Williams, you tell the strings what to do. And it was just the music we made was just magical. I also found out that I'm just not a recording artist, a singer. I am an artist. I like the magic of music. I just don't want to do music. I've turned down songs that could have been a hit for me. Saving All My Love for You came to me first. They
Mm.
sent me Saving All My Love before Whitney. And I said, well, I love the song, but I'm not going to sing about a married man and his mistress. I said, can you change the story, the lyrics and the story? And they said no. And I said, I'm so sorry, I can't get it. I can't do it. So they gave it to Whitney and she had a huge hit with it. And no doubt about it, that was her song. But I've done that twice where, they've sent me songs that turned out to be hit. And I said, no, no, because I found out that I'm an artist and I love the magic of music. I love the message of music. And Tom Bell further enhanced that and brought that out, uh, uh, brought that out for me. The string sessions, he had oboes on records, on pop records, on hit records. He had oboes and clarinets. When I was working with other producers, they weren't using those instruments. They weren't doing oboes and clarinets and flutes. Tom Bell used the whole orchestra to create a sound that was expressly his.
That's beautiful. And that's amazing that he empowered you with that opportunity to produce, which served you throughout the rest of your career. And that was very unique, I'm assuming, at that time also to be a woman who's a songwriter, producer, um, all the above. So
There were
it's
only two of us that was really doing it at the time. The other was my friend, Minnie Riperton.
right.
Minnie was singing and she was writing and helping co-produce some of the stuff along as well. She and I were the only two that I knew of that were in the studio and really giving some input on how we wanted the music to go.
Were you on the Perfect Angel album from Minnie Riperton?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I did that. There's one song that I did with her called Every Time He Comes Around, I Feel Like I'm on Fire.
yeah.
And I was doing this whole riffing stuff over many, and they were looking at me like, "What?" And I said, uh, "I don't know. Stevie said do it, so I'm doing it."
That's an incredible album.
Incredible, and she was an incredible musician, incredible woman, incredible artist. Went too soon. I met Maya Rudolph when she was 2 years old.
Oh yeah,
Remember meeting Maya when she was a baby, and now every time I see Maya, I think of Minnie, and I say, Minnie, I know you're up there in heaven. I know you're smiling because you're proud of your baby girl. She's incredible. But yeah, I met her when she was 2.
amazing. Amazing. And you you did a bunch with an album and obviously the Family Ties song with Johnny Mathis. Maybe you could tell me
Yeah.
a little about how you got connected in with him originally.
I was on the road with Earth, Wind and Fire. I think I was touring with them at the time. And I got a call. We had a break, and I went home, and my manager said, Johnny Mathis wants to do a duet, and they're looking at all of the female artists on the label. And they said, of course, they're talking to Barbara Streisand right now, but I'm going, your name has come up in the pot. And I said, oh my God, I would love to do this. I would love to do this with Johnny Mathis. So my manager called and said, okay, you're going to do a duet with Johnny and his producer, Jack Gold. And so I said, oh my God, I ran, told my mom, I'm going to be working with Johnny Mathis. And she talking about, girl, I need a new dress for the studio. And I'm going to get my hair done. I said, I'm not taking you in there because the last time I took you with me and introduced you to Marvin Gaye, you clown so bad, you're not going in the studio with me and Johnny Mathis. And so I went in with him. But the incredible thing is that he was more afraid than I was about doing this duet because he'd never done a duet before. This was the first time he was singing with somebody. And he came in there and he was a nervous wreck. And he said, you sang with Stevie Wonder and you sang, you've done background with people. So you just tell me what to sing and where, because I don't know what to do. And I said, oh, we'll be just fine. So he brought this bottle of wine. We drank the wine, and by the time we got to the end of that wine, we was just singing,
Wow.
and did the record. And it was incredible because Jack Gold was an incredible producer, but it was very difficult because I don't know. I believe he had Parkinson's at that time, and he would completely shake, and it was hard to understand him. But he had the vision in his head
Mm.
about what John and I were going to do. And it was just an incredible time to work with him as well. The disability and all, his mind was still intact, and he knew what to tell us and how he wanted us to do it. And after that, Johnny and I became very close friends. I mean, we started hanging out. Um, and doing things together. So we got a call and they said, oh, there's a new TV show coming out called Family Ties. And they've got a theme song, and the writers want you and Johnny to do it. And I said, okay. So we went in and we did the theme song. I can still hear that theme song today.
Yeah. Oh, you
I
hear it's,
a
it's
family, yeah, I can go to Family Ties and there we are yodeling, you know.
I haven't heard it. I watched that show religiously as like a 7-year-old, 8-year-old. I
Yeah,
haven't heard the theme song in about 30 years, but I know I could sing it. I could sing the entire thing. I
yeah,
know it by heart.
yep, yep.
Iconic, iconic.
It was just incredible. And just to think, what is it, 40 some odd years later, I want to say maybe 50, we still, you can still hear that song. And it sounds fresh. It doesn't
Yeah.
sound dated or anything. We had a lot of fun with that. Working with Johnny was really a lot of fun. That's my buddy. He still sends me flowers on my birthday and stuff like that. He's just wonderful, a sweetheart, and I love him.
With Johnny, you guys met the Prince Charles, now the King Charles, right?
Yes, yes,
You,
yeah.
you mind sharing a little about that experience at that time?
I'm telling you, I wanted to kill him. I wanted to kill him because uh and I understand you got another show I want to talk to you about because I wanted to tell this story on that show.
Yeah.
So Johnny and I, Prince Charles, he loves, Too Much Too Little Too Late. And we're there at Albert's Hall doing the concert. And so I'm supposed to do the duet with Johnny, like song number 6. So I'm in my dressing room way in the back, all the way down the hall in this medieval castle, it looks like. And I got my valet and we're dressing and getting ready for my song. And so, but we hear, we've got the speaker on so we can hear Johnny doing his show. He does 2 songs, and on the 3rd song, he goes into how too much, too little, too late, and giving the introduction. I am not dressed. I'm not ready. So me and my valet, we go running down the hall. She's fixing my clothes and patting, and I get out there. We do the duet. King Charles gives us a standing ovation. We feeling good. We're going to meet him afterwards. We're going to go through the procession. And we walking back to my dressing room, and I'm patting myself on the back. Oh, yeah, that was, yeah, we killed it, blah, blah, blah. I get to the dressing room, Scott. I look in the mirror. My wig's on backwards.
Amazing.
I said, now I have to make a decision. For the procession, for the line to meet the prince, do I turn her around or do I just leave her the way she is? I decided, forget it. I'm just going to leave her the way she is. I go through the line. I mean, Prince Charles, I want to kill Johnny. Okay. I want to kill him because, I got the dress, I got the look, and she on backwards.
Incredible. Incredible. Have you looked to see if there's pictures of that?
That would be funny. I haven't looked
Yeah.
there's pictures of that, but that would be pretty incredible if there was some pictures. But yeah, that was it. And shortly thereafter, well, maybe it had to be a couple of years. There was a popular book I don't know if it was a poem. I think it was a book called The Hunting of the Snark.
Yeah.
And so they decided that they wanted to do a theater piece on the hunting of the snark. And so I was invited to be a part of that. John Hurt, all these big British artists on there. And I was the squirrel. And they had me in 6-inch heels. The guy that designed it, my outfit designed Princess Diana's wedding gown. And I'm telling you, my feet hurt me so bad in those 6-inch heels. So we're going through the procession line, and I'm about to meet the Duchess of York. I'm about to meet her. And I said, I would curse you, but my corns hurt. I said, my corns hurt in these shoes. I said, but I'm glad you like the theater piece.
She understood, I'm guessing.
I'm telling you, my feet hurt me so bad, but it was incredible, the line of artists. I was the only American artist in the entire theater piece, was invited to go over and do that, but it was pretty amazing.
Incredible story. And then you another great producer you worked with, who you mentioned, was George Duke. And with George, you produced probably one of the iconic soundtrack songs of all time, "Let's Hear It for the Boy." And
Yeah.
what I understand is that when that song was first brought to you and George, he didn't like it, but you were bullish on it. So tell
Yeah.
me what was George's hesitation? How did you convince him to ultimately record the song?
Well, we were in the studio and we had just finished this incredible song that is still on radio today. Well, a lot of my music is still on radio, but we did a song called Black Butterfly.
Mhm.
And it's, I don't know if you've heard it, but this lush orchestration, beautiful song. And we got a call from my manager saying, the record label, they're doing the soundtrack to this film, and they want to know if you're interested in hearing a song for it, and I said, oh, of course. And it's going to be in a film. Of course, I'm interested. And so we go over to Dean Pitchford and Tom Snow's house, the writers, and they're singing there on the piano, singing the song. They give us the tape, and we leave. And I said, "Oh my God, George, I love this song. We're going to do this song. I don't like it. We're not going to do it." I said, "Well, excuse me." I said, "What did you say?" "I don't like the song. We're not going to do it." I said, "George, it's going to be in a movie." "I don't care. I don't like it. We're not going to do it." Man, I was talking to him. And finally, when I grew up, they said that the man is the head. But but the woman is the neck. And I tell people she can turn that head any way she wants to when she put a mind to it. So I stopped talking to George and I went to his wife, Corrine. And I said, "Corrine, I want to do this song. I can feel it. It's going to be a huge song, this song." And George said he won't do it with me. And we need to do this song. She said, "Girl, don't worry about it. I'll fix it." A week later, we was in the studio doing it. And George told me,
Amazing.
"I still don't like it." And then it went what, over 15 million sales or something. And he's on my they did a documentary on me called Unsung, and he on there talking about, "I still don't like it." I said, "Well, then give me your money. I'll take your money. You don't like it, just give me that check you got, and we'll call it even." So he
Yeah.
did not want to do that song.
Do you have any memories of the recording of that song?
Oh yeah, being in the
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had this incredible studio in his home, so we recorded everything there. And in the background, I sang the background with two of my background singers, George and Shannon Merrill, and their boy meet girl, their artist name. And they wrote "I Want to Dance with Somebody" for Whitney. They wrote a bunch of songs, my background singers for Whitney, and they did the background with me, and we laugh about that even till today.
That's incredible. Yeah, George was an incredible musician,
Oh,
jazz to Frank Zappa, to the programming work he did on the production.
yeah,
Amazing.
just he is by far still one of my favorite keyboard players.
Yeah.
There is no one that I've heard that has the touch that George Duke had. And like you said, could go from classical music to rock, Frank Zappa. I was the opening act for him and Stanley Clark, you know.
For George and Stanley? That's
So I was
wow.
I opened for George Duke and Stanley Clark. And Scott, I was so scared because Stanley Clark,
Yeah.
he played with his back to the audience, and he was not the most friendliest guy. He wasn't mean or anything, but he just I was scared to go out there, and I kept wondering myself, how am I on tour with the Stanley Clark and George Duke? But I was exposed to it all.
Yeah. So absolutely incredible. And that allowed you, I mean, that was amazing. That was a massive hit. And after that, you released your first full gospel record. Is that right?
Yes, yes,
And that
yeah,
won a few Grammys. And
yeah.
was it the success of Hear It for the Boy that allowed you to do that? Because you've obviously had gospel in your albums throughout, but this was the first dedicated effort.
Well, it's like you said, I'd have been doing gospel on my secular records,
Yeah.
at least one song on each of my secular albums had gospel on it. So by the time got to discussing a full project of gospel music, of course, the Sony, they were like, "We spent all this money making you a star to do this Jesus music." And I said, "Listen, I've been doing it all along, and I really want to do this." So I got the opportunity to do it. It was the same time that Philip Bailey wanted to do a full gospel project. So I went to Sparrow and he went to, I forget the other record label that he went to. We both went to separate gospel labels. And because I had been doing Christian music all along, that audience knew who I was, and there was an acceptance of me because I know a lot of other artists did it. Bob Dylan went and did some
Yeah.
gospel,
Oh,
so
some great albums. Yeah.
great albums. And so because we'd been doing it all along, there was an acceptance of us, for our music.
And over the last 20 years, it seems like your focus has been, is that right? Is gospel more on the gospel side versus the pop side?
It's been mostly on the gospel side, yes. Yeah, the writing and the recording. And you know, that's sometimes that's the way the things turn and go.
That's amazing. And are you still actively writing songs and recording any music?
You know, I'm not doing what I should. You know, I stepped away. I've been doing other things, you know, working on uh other projects, got involved in real estate, which I love because God ain't making no more land. And you know, there was other things that I got involved in. But now what has happened over the last year, which is funny, is that I didn't know that the hip hop rap community were big fans of mine. And so, you know, my son, who's all into that, you know, has been talking to these artists. And he said, Mom, you know, he said, you didn't know that Snoop Dogg said on one of his records, just like Niecy said, it's going to take a miracle. I said, Snoop Dogg quoted me? He said, yeah. And then on Nas's record, he said, he's talking and he said, man, where are you going to? I'm going to the Deniece Williams concert, you know, and I have actually been now in communication with Snoop Dogg and Nas. I did a thing not too long ago with an artist called Scarface. And we're getting together to do a new project. They want to do a new project with me. And I'm saying, really? So we'll see how it turns out. We're now putting the pieces together where I'm going to be working with Nas and Scarface on a brand new project.
Amazing. Amazing. I love
Isn't
that.
that amazing? It's like,
Yeah, of
really? They want to work with me? I mean,
course they do. Of
you
course they
know,
do.
but I didn't know,
Yeah.
you know, I had no idea Missy Elliott, you know, produced one of my songs on a young artist. I had no idea that they were listening to me, but what it was is I think their folks were listening to me, and that's how they got into my music. And it's just an incredible honor, you know, to see all these artists of this whole music genre that I wasn't into,
Yeah.
but they all know about me and they all love me, love the music, and want to work with me. So I'm hoping that we'll be in the studio at least by the end of this year working on this new project.
I love hearing it. Well, your music and your career has just transcended genres. R&B, pop, gospel, soul. You've done it. So it doesn't surprise me that the influence is wide.
Yeah,
Happy.
well, it didn't surprise you, but it surprised me. I couldn't believe it. I say Snoop Dogg likes my music. And then you know, he sent me his phone number and we talked, and it's like, oh my God, okay. You know, Nas came out to Vegas. Let's go out to dinner. So now we're hanging out. You know, it's like very interesting to see how you can impress people and the impression, you know, for me, I wanted to make sure that the impression that I made through my music and even through my life was positive because so many young girls were listening to me, young women listening to me. I remember going to a concert one time and I was doing I went to a record store to do a signing, and these girls had silly tattooed on their necks. They had free on their ankles, and they had my songs on their hand. And that's when I said, I have to be careful the image that I present because they're looking at me, they're listening to me, and they're taking what I say seriously. And I'm an influencer, so I have to be right. And that's when I determined I'm going to watch what I say. I'm going to watch how I present myself. And it's not pretend. This is just who I am. I'm just I'm just being me. I don't have time to pretend to be somebody else. I like being Deniece Williams. Is she okay with me? And
Absolutely.
even with people that I admired, you know, that I just took the good part. You know, I took the things that I admired about them, and I have the same chance to do, you know, to do that with people. I'm starting to write. I have a book out with called Things That Grow in the Desert. And it's the story of my 12-year battle with my son who was a heroin addict. and he's come out on the other side now. He's 3 years clean. So he's writing his story, and I'm writing from the parent codependent story, and how I had, what it took for me as his parent to finally say no more. I mean, he was out there in a $40,000 a month program in Malibu with the chef was from Cordon Bleu. They was getting massages, and I went out there and I saw the place. I said, well, what do I have to do to come up in here? I mean, but his story of how it started, my story on how I was a codependent until I finally said, I'm going to put you in God's hand. And now 3 years with him being clean, with his family. And so I'm excited to write this book with him and his wife, who was also on drugs. And the fact that I said, God, I want to write this book, but I can't until he's on the other side of it. And now that he's on the other side of it, working at a rehabilitation center, starting his own sober living homes, and they're doing great. So I'm writing that book. And the other book that I've been working on is called Bringing Out the Queen in You, where I took the year-long beautification process that Esther went through before the virgins went before the king. They had to have a beautification process for 1 year. So I'm writing a book on that 1 year process that they went to become a queen. So those are the two books on that.
Great projects. I'm happy
Yeah.
to hear you have so much going on.
Yeah, it's
But
good. I mean, it ain't over till it's over.
that's right. Well, if you have a few more minutes, I have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
So I asked my audience if they had any questions for Deniece Williams, and I got a few questions back, which I'd
Okay.
like to ask you. You've met so many amazing people, and I'm going to direct my audience also to check out your YouTube and your diva stories, because you have
Yeah.
great stories on there. One of
Thank
the
you.
questions is, did you ever have any experience working with or meeting Prince?
I did.
Yes.
Prince and I had the same managers. We were managed by Cavallo and Ruffalo. And so I was going into a studio. He had been in the studio, and I was going into the studio on Sunset. And I went in there, and there was purple cake and purple drinks in the refrigerator, a bed in the middle of the studio, purple stuff everywhere. And so he was not in that room. I was supposed to be in that room, and then he was coming into the room down the hall. And so when he drove up, I said, "Get out of that car. You better come clean up that room." That we laughed. But he was such a sweetheart, just such a genius. There was something, he was just a genius. And the things that he thought of, he turned the record industry around when he started, selling his own product online. And your ticket to his concert included his music project. He was just incredible,
Yeah, amazing.
and just such a sweetheart, just a sweet.
Did he clean up the studio for you and get rid of all the
They cleaned up the studio. He didn't come out of his car. I was down there talking about, come out of that limousine. So the sister,
Classic.
no, don't worry about Miss Williams. I said, well, yeah. So, but he was wonderful, and we had occasions to be around each other, and just a genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, a genius.
Somebody mentioned, and I didn't know this, and I found this interesting. If it's true, you confirm it, that you, when you were doing some of your background session work, you worked with the Tubes.
I
You made
did.
And then they asked, they said, I heard that the Tubes wanted Deniece to join the band. Is there, is there
Well,
truth that the Tubes wanted you to?
they talked to me, but I couldn't see myself with the Tubes. They talked to me. I did a song with them called "Don't Touch Me There."
Yeah, okay. They were wild. Yeah, so tell
Don't
me.
touch me there. I loved it. And they loved me. It was me and Maxine Waters and Julia Waters, her sister, the famous Water sisters that, were doing all the background. And they were talking to us, but I said, no.
Well, you were worried before about going to hell based on, whatever you're listening
I
to.
was on my way.
This was taking you, this
Yeah,
was putting you
that,
dead center.
that was my ride right there.
That's right. That's right.
I
All
love
right.
it.
The last question I got for you is, similar to the Prince question, and the question is: you've been around so many amazing, incredible people who have interesting stories, fascinating backgrounds, fascinating psyches. Is there anyone that you would who's the biggest, I'll say, diva that you met? It doesn't have to be man, it doesn't have to be woman, man, woman, diva, and any little anecdote that you could share of experience that and thinking that's pretty freaking crazy.
I met a lot of them, and I think a lot of the singers I didn't understand, because they would meet me and they would be not very nice, but after a while. But I think off the top of my head, the biggest diva that I met was Diana Ross when she and I did the Academy Awards together. But and so I'd heard all of these things about how she wasn't nice. So I had my dukes up in my spirit. If she talking crazy to me, she getting Detroit is getting ready to meet Gary, Indiana. And she was so nice to me. So nice. We sat, we talked in the green room. She was lovely. And it was total opposite from what I thought meeting her was going to be. And I just to this day admire her and respect her. I don't know what she did to other people, but something in her told her to she liked me, and we spent time together in the green room before we performed for the Academy Awards,
Incredible.
the Oscars.
And I want to touch on, this wasn't a question from the audience, but I'm gonna go with it because you mentioned Nancy Wilson earlier as somebody
Yeah.
who's one of your heroes, and I know you recorded with her towards in the late '80s or maybe early '90s. Tell me about how that relationship.
Well, in all of my interviews, I would say I'm a big Nancy Wilson fan. I love Nancy Wilson. She's one of my idols. And so I'd be talking about her. So I got a call from her manager saying, Miss Wilson would love to invite you to dinner at her house. And so she was living out in Pacific Palisades. And I went to her house, had dinner, and she talked to me about makeup, hair, clothes. And it was just phenomenal to meet someone that you grow up admiring and wanting to be like, and here you are in their presence, and they're sharing with you and being kind and being nice. And I will never forget that as long as I live, how she was just so wonderful to me.
Beautiful. Deniece, thank you so much for sharing all these amazing stories. Thank you so
Oh,
much for all the amazing music.